Okay, so it looks like about 8 after-ish.
Exactly.
All right, let's do it. My recorder's going, and let's hit it, Roger.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 472.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 14th of May, 2021.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Picture light and he's flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a private plane accidentally takes off with no one on board. Controllers clear a 737 for takeoff with a service vehicle on the runway. More news, your feedback, and today's plane tale leaving them behind. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and lock positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 472 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an award-winning TV and radio reporter currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation. 1010 wins in
New York City.
And I was thinking to myself, not only is he in New York City, but he's also here with us in the live audience. Hey there, Roger. Thanks for doing these awesome intros for us. And joining me today from her lakeside studio in South, she's a doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument rated backstabbing jumper dumper, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. We can't add any more things. I think it's reached maximum.
Please don't.
I can come up with a few more hobbies to do and things to master.
Yeah, then I'd have to take a breath somewhere in between. So
no.
don't do that.
There's no. You can't breathe. Just power through it.
Well, you sound like my choir director. She says, "Don't
you
breathe."
practice these things, right? Like it's all breath control, and I have faith in you.
Can't do it anymore.
Good to see you, Jeff.
Great to see you. Also joining us from his studio in
Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
He's a world traveler. No, well, he used to be. He is a professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330-340 captain for Virgin Atlantic. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff, and hi, Steph. No funny one-liners today. I'm just looking forward to getting on with the show.
Let's do it.
Stand by for news.
All right, let's start with this. An accident. Everybody's been talking about it. It just happened, I believe it was yesterday. That this happened. And this is from the Aviation Herald, Simon's wonderful news site. A Key Lime Air Swearingen SA-22 6 Tango Charlie Metro 2, or what do they call that? The San Antonio sewer pipe?
Yes.
Or something like that?
Yeah. That's what
Metroliner, yes, I'm sorry. That's the
San Antonio sewer pipe is the, or something, sewer, I don't forget. Anyway.
Sewer pipe, I think. Yeah. Registration November 280 Kilo Lima, performing flight 970 from Salida, Colorado, or is it Salida? Salida? Tomato. Okay.
I don't know.
To Denver Centennial Airport in Colorado with one crew. Was on a visual approach to Centennial's runway 17 left, cleared for the approach, and was descending through 6,400 feet, about 3 nautical miles north of the threshold of runway 17 left. A private Cirrus SR-22, registration November 416 Delta Juliet, with 2 people on board, was also on approach to Denver Centennial, descending through 6,400 feet, about 3 nautical miles north of the threshold of pretty much the same place. 17 right, though, the Cirrus was intending to proceed to. The two aircraft collided. The Cirrus apparently struck across the fuselage of the Metroliner just above the wings, taking out the whole cabin section at that point. The Metro crew declared emergency on tower frequency reporting. Well, there was only one crew member there. He declared an emergency, stating that he had a right engine failure and didn't know that half his airplane was missing, not quite half, but a big chunk of it. And after landing, the crew, or he, advised it had definitely been in a mid-air collision. I tell you what, probably the best thing for us to do would be to play a little bit of video. And VAS Aviation on YouTube, it's a really good YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe to it, you should. Has already come out with kind of putting all of this together with some radar, simulated radar imagery. Pardon me? Recreation. Thank you, Liz. And using the live ATC audio and such. And so let's go ahead and play it right now. Hang on. Let's see here. Let me do this right. Maybe add to stream. VAS Aviation.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, traffic at your 1 to 2 o'clock a mile, about to turn base with a Skyhawk 6800.
Looking for traffic, 6 Delta Juliet.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, fly towards the west shore of Cherry Creek.
The west shore of Cherry Creek for 6 Delta Juliet.
Tower, good morning, KLM 970 on the visual on 7 left.
KLM 970 Centennial Tower, if you can, just maintain that speed. Therell be traffic in position prior to your arrival.
I'll do it, KLM 970.
Thank you.
We'll just pause here for a moment. So the first radio communication we heard there was from the Cirrus SR-22 entering a right downwind on the west side of the airport. The runway is 17 and 35, so basically north-south orientation. And they're entering the downwind, and the tower controller calls out traffic for the Cirrus, which is ahead of them, and turning the base leg in front of them. So he's trying to kind of get all sequenced behind him. And then they call out, well, they haven't actually called out traffic yet, but there's another airplane. The other player in this drama is the Metroliner coming in, also from the west, but entering a right base for much further out, by the way, for the parallel runway 17 left, and that's the key lime 970 call sign. So we'll proceed here.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, traffic you're following just turned right base. They're heading to the right, 6,600 Cessna.
Traffic in sight, 6 Delta Juliet.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, follow them, runway 17 right, cleared to land. Additional traffic north shores, the Metroliner for the parallel.
Traffic in sight, cleared to land, 17 right, 6 Delta Juliet.
Now, pausing again, not sure he actually sees the Metroliner, because you'd think that if he did, he wouldn't have done what he does next, turning the base and basically flying right into the Metroliner.
KLM 970 traffic, 1 o'clock, 1 mile, 6,500. Cessna on final for the parallel runway.
Roger, KLM 970, we're looking.
KLM 970, runway 17 left, cleared to land, wind calm.
Clear to land, 17 left, KLM 970.
So he's coming in on the 17 left. It says that they collide midair, and the Cirrus pulls the cap system.
6 Delta Juliet, do not overshoot the final. Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, do you require assistance?
Tower, KLM 970, declare an emergency. We had, looks like the right engine failed, so I'm going to continue my landing here.
KLM 970, we have crews coming, continue inbound, runway 17 left, clear to land.
Continuing.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, if you hear this transmission, we have emergency vehicles, 0 direction.
And Tower, there's another one, it's probably a Cirrus that dropped the parachute on final for runway 17.
Thank you.
Cessna 251, do not overshoot final. There is an aircraft that is in distress just south of Cherry Creek Reservoir.
By the way, that traffic Cessna 251 has an interesting story that we'll tell in a bit.
Yeah, they just pulled chute 251.
Cessna 251, if you can give me an accurate location, we would appreciate it.
They're about 2 miles by those buildings right off 35. Yeah, I see a parachute.
Yeah, the parachute is just south of the reservoir. It's in the airport vicinity, just south of the reservoir, correct?
Yeah, about a mile from the reservoir. Tower 3, Sierra Papa. There's a Hawk. We're laying between the parallels.
Attention all aircraft, use caution for a Hawk reported between the parallels.
Tower, that was a definite mid-air. On short final. It's 455.
Yeah, forget about the Hawk.
Seems super important right then. Hey, just let us know.
970, do you need any assistance?
I'm going to taxi off here, and I think I'll just park over in Signature. I'm good, though.
KLM 970, roger, I appreciate that. And if you just stand by.
By the way, right now, the Key Lime Air pilot has no idea that that he was involved in a mid-air collision.
Presumably the tower is looking at all of this going, just stand by.
Why didn't the controller just say, no, don't go anywhere, just stop there, because you haven't a clue what systems...
I know, I agree with you. Let's talk about that here in a second. We'll play the rest of it.
Sure.
Tower, I'm going to taxi on Alpha here back to this northwest corner of the signature ramp.
KLM 970, roger, approved as requested, and we'll get a crew out to you also.
Roger.
So here's some pictures of the Key Lime Cirrus-Metroliner with a big chunk missing, and then also there was a picture of the Cirrus. Let's see, I need to remove this, and we're back. And a picture of the Cirrus after it alighted on the ground, probably not very softly. I hear that if you use that Cirrus aircraft parachute system, or whatever CAP stands for.
Yeah, Cirrus airframe parachute system, I think.
Parachute system.
Complete,
anyway,
yeah,
I hear that it's not a nice soft landing, but hey, you'll live through it most likely.
Yeah.
So,
I noticed he'd opened the doors for speed brakes. Did you notice that to slow himself down?
I don't think that's. So okay, let's go back a few steps. One thing I have a question for you, Steph. You may or may not know the answer to this. I'm kind of confused because at first, before Bass Aviation came out with this and put everything together, I found on Live ATC separate audio, and the tower controller has they're like two different voices.
Correct.
And I looked up the 10-9 airport diagram for Centennial Field, and only has one frequency listed for the tower, but it seems to me that there were two tower frequencies, one for the
I'm sure there were two tower frequencies. They split it.
Okay. Maybe there was like a NOTAM or something that said, we're operating.
There might not have. I'm not entirely sure. Actually, I could look it up and see.
Why wouldn't they have it on this airport? Because I see the frequencies here, and there's only one tower frequency. Anyway, I was a little confused by that.
Could they not have both controllers on the same frequency?
They were not on the same frequency.
Okay.
I don't think they were.
They weren't, because I don't think you can hear the. I don't think the Metroliner could hear what the Cirrus was hearing from the different controllers.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
they're not broadcasting on the same frequency. They keep them separate.
Right.
Because so it's a very high volume Class Delta airport, if I remember correctly. And yes, it's a lot of traffic going in there all day long.
So I'm wondering if that might be maybe a factor, maybe a small factor in all of this.
Talk about that too if you
add
that to the list, because I think it is. But anyway.
Okay. But I think, in my own opinion, I'm thinking that the Cirrus pilot thought that the traffic that was being called out to him was that same traffic, the one that was in the same pattern that he was in ahead of him for the right runway. And I'm not convinced that he was actually looking for and actually sighted the Metroliner that was coming in to the parallel runway. But
so I could actually see a lot of different scenarios here. from the Cirrus's perspective. So they called traffic in sight. The first traffic that had been called to them was traffic that they were following in the same right-hand pattern for 17 right. And it was, they're 1 o'clock ahead of them on the base leg, so they're following them. They did call out to the Cirrus the Metroliner traffic, and then they just said traffic in sight, but it's never clear which traffic. It's never clear that the Cirrus is acknowledging that they have the additional traffic in sight.
Right.
So perhaps they did not see them, and excuse me, losing my voice there for half a second. If they're at the same altitude roughly, and they're not moving relative to one another in, their field of vision, that can actually be very difficult to pick out, especially when you're looking for other things. You're in a busy terminal environment. You're, concentrated on landing phase. So you should be looking for all those things, but it can still be very hard to see.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're on a collision, you're on a constant bearing, which means there's no relative movement across the windshield, which means you've really got to be staring at the right spot to see it.
Yeah, exactly. If nothing moves in your field of vision, if it's just a relative constant there, it's very hard for your eyes and your brain to pick that out as being something to be aware of.
The other factor, I think, in that second call that the Cirrus made, acknowledging that he had that traffic in sight, and it was all included in the landing clearance as well. So I think that might be,
Yeah, and the Cirrus traffic was never pointed out to the Metroliner, just the Cessna traffic.
That was ahead
and
of the Cirrus.
he never acknowledged that he saw that traffic either. He just said looking for traffic.
Right.
Now, to the Metroliner, the Cirrus would be more or less pointing straight at him.
Correct. He would have to look,
like nose on.
If it's single pilot, so he's sitting on the left, presumably sitting in the left seat, he would have to look, 90 degrees to his right, across and out the window that direction. He may not have ever had a view of the Cirrus. And you can see where the Cirrus hit the aft portion of the fuselage there. He probably never saw the Cirrus.
No. And the frontal area of a Cirrus is pretty small. It's a sleek aeroplane, so it's not going to be hard to see when it's coming directly at you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or it's not going to be easy to see, sorry.
Right, right. So when I first heard this, Nick, I had the same responses like, why would he taxi the airplane? I mean, I'm thinking if I was in a midair collision, I would stop straight ahead on the runway, or at least just pull off to the side a little bit. I wouldn't go all the way and taxi to the signature ramp, the fixed base operation ramp. But then I realized, he just thought it was an engine failure. If I just had a right engine fail and I was looking outside at it and thinking, I don't see anything dripping, it's not on fire. Yeah, I'll go ahead and move this thing out of the way so I don't impact the operation.
Sure, especially at a smaller airport like that. It's still it's not a big international airport, but
then I realized, it's because he had no idea that he was in a midair collision, and that we're talking a huge chunk of this. I'm really amazed at this Metroliner and how it still the tail didn't fall off.
Sturdy airplane.
Wow.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there must be a lot of structure still left in the belly of that aircraft to keep the whole back end from flapping off, because I think it was incredibly lucky to get away with that.
Well, let's somebody was there to see the Cirrus floating down its parachute. There we go. He's saying, well, I'm not sure what he's saying. It's in
look,
Spanish.
Free airplane.
Yeah. Big toy airplane.
Look. He said, look.
Get salvage rights.
I didn't catch all of it. So you were asking earlier how fast. So from the Cirrus CAPS guide, it's after parachute deployment, Cirrus aircraft will be descending vertically at approximately 17 knots. So that's how fast it comes down.
Yeah, so that's like close to 20 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Is that equivalent to like a parachute landing fall kind of velocity?
If you didn't do anything and no wind. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like an all round parachute.
I don't know what the descent rates are on those, to be fair.
Yeah. But it's like, from what I remember in the Air Force parachute landing fall training, it's like jumping off a 10 or 11 foot tall wall. So it's not.
But landing on your backside.
Yeah.
You can't do a parachute roll to absorb the impact.
No, you can't. Yeah.
No.
You're just going to go whack.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, it's the equivalent of like a 20 mile an hour fender bender in your car.
Mm-hmm. The other little video that I wanted to play here, and you'll remember that I mentioned the Cessna that was kind of last. It was behind the Cirrus SR-22 in that pattern, and instructed not to. Well, here I'll play it, but it's an interesting twist, I think, to this whole thing. So.
So the 332 needs runway in there. Hold short runway.
Cessna 251 pilot did this recreation using Google Earth. And if you're listening to the audio,
Charlie on this frequency.
You should definitely play the link that we'll have there, so you can see what he's put together.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, do not overshoot the final.
Do not overshoot the final. Too late. So he has kind of a breakdown of the two airplanes involved in the midair.
Cirrus 6 Delta Juliet, if you hear this transmission, we have emergency vehicles 0 direction. Cessna 251, do not overshoot final. There is an aircraft that is in distress just south of Cherry Creek Reservoir.
Yeah, they just pulled chute, 251.
Cessna 251, if you can give me an accurate location, we would appreciate it.
They're about 2 miles by those buildings right off 35. Yeah, I see a parachute.
Yeah, the parachute is just south of the reservoir. Is in the airport vicinity, just south of the reservoir, correct?
About a mile from the reservoir.
Okay.
64332 can confirm the parachute was directly in front of runway 35.
Do we get to hear about the Hawk?
64332 holding short of 17 at Bravo 8.
Thank you.
Attack air.
Okay, there's some video of the another angle of the Cirrus and the parachute, and then I think we have a still picture of the fire department coming out and the Metroliner with the big chunk missing.
Yeah, that is unbelievable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Thank the Lord they didn't have passengers back there.
This is the best part of this story.
Here's
though.
the twist.
A great part of the story.
The guy that was just putting together this video
in 251.
Cessna 251. Cessna 251, who was don't overshoot the final because there's there was an incident. It was his first solo flight.
Yep.
And there's a picture here of him with his little, the t-shirt, cut your t-shirt off.
Yeah,
and
shirt tail.
Showing, yeah, shirt tail.
Let's hope it's not his last.
Right. I like the what they drew on his shirt, though. It's got the collision and the parachute.
First solo, 5/12,
traffic to follow.
2021. Yeah, it says traffic to follow and has a little picture of the Cirrus with the parachute.
Yeah. How do I follow that, sir?
Yeah. Well, don't go where they went. That's for sure.
That is. That is. I mean, there's a lesson that he will never forget. I mean, he is always going to drop his wing and check finals on his finals.
And not overshoot final when there's opposing bases.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not really, because the Metroliner was straight in, but I know exactly what you mean.
True.
But the thing, just like the incident with the flight instructor Ben a couple of weeks ago, the student was on his introductory flight, and now this one out there on his first solo flight. Wow, I mean you couldn't make this stuff up. Yeah,
I mean he kept his calm and cool too, and was able to give important information, and then continue and do his landing. It's great.
Very impressed. And also with the work that he does with whatever program he was using with Google Earth to kind of, you'll just have to look at that link. Yeah. But again, and great job by the Metroliner pilot. Now, had he known what had really happened, maybe his voice would have sounded a little bit different.
Because there've been a lot of comments, especially like, wow, he sounded so calm, cool, and collected. I'm like, well, he just thought he had and he was on, final for the runway, so engine failure.
I mean, do
okay,
those
I'm going to
things
land.
have a proper cockpit door, or is it just a curtain, or what?
I'm assuming that they must, because otherwise it would have gotten really, the sound would change.
Noisy,
would change anyway.
drafty.
Yeah.
Someone shut the door back there.
Right.
I think, it was a cargo version of the Metro, so maybe they do have like a solid door, like to keep the cargo from coming up into the cockpit. That's a good question.
Flying up the front end.
Yeah. Wow. Talking about a crazy, and then the fact that nobody was injured.
Yeah, I mean, this had the best outcome you could possibly think of for the accident that actually occurred.
Yeah,
absolutely. A real tribute to the safety systems in the Cirrus. I think it's fantastic. And to the strength and reliability of the Metroliner. I think it's just superb.
Yeah, just good stuff all around.
Yeah.
So there you have it. That's our first news item. Wish they could all be like that. That was exciting.
Yes. It was exciting and a good outcome. And, interesting plot twists.
Right. Happy endings. They don't always have a happy ending.
This is one of those, happy ending, and you can feel good learning things from this incident as well. There's something for every pilot out there to take away from this.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that accident in the future, but until then, why don't we move on? Oh, wait. Low Approach. Somebody named Low Approach in the YouTube chat says, I flew Metros. There's usually no bulkhead between the cabin and the cockpit. But, I mean, did you fly the cargo version or the passenger version? Low Approach or whatever your name was. I'm sorry, I've already forgotten.
Yes.
I can imagine that maybe there are different configurations as well for different operators, different specifications.
True. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Let's move on to our second item. This is a final report of an Inuit De Havilland DH-8 -300 at Schefferville, Quebec on January 20th, 2020. Thank you. An Air Inuit De Havilland -8-300, registration Charlie Golf X-Ray Alpha India, performing flight 820 from Quebec to Schefferville with 42 passengers and 3 crew, was landing in Schefferville at 11:09 local time, midday, when the crew received a touched runway indication. The aircraft rolled out without further incident and taxied to the apron. They probably
That's interesting. My landings were always so smooth. I needed a warning to tell me that I'd actually touched down. Yeah.
Yeah. You're on the runway.
Hey, you're on the ground. You can.
Yeah, you can relax.
Start slowing down.
Yeah.
The Canadian TSB said, there's a missing word there. The Canadian TSB said that the aft fuselage contacted the runway surface, resulting in damage. The TSB rated the occurrence an accident and opened a Class 3 investigation. On May 4th, 2021, they released their final report, concluding the probable causes of the accident were: the pilots forgot to perform the descent checklist and realized this at an inopportune time when the pilot monitoring was providing a position report. And this position report he's talking about is like a position that where they were in the traffic pattern, because they were pretty low to the ground at this point and very close to landing, which is amazing to me that they were worried about the descent check at that point. Anyway, given the ambiguities and contradictions in the stabilized approach guidelines, the captain interpreted that he was allowed to continue the approach below 500 feet above the aerodrome elevation, although the flaps had not been set to 35 degrees and the final checklist had not been completed.
Hang on a minute.
Ambiguities?
Ambiguities.
Contradictions? It doesn't sound like a very good stabilized approach guideline.
Yeah, no. I've read a lot of these stabilized
They're
approach
usually
criteria.
pretty
and
black
they're
and
usually
white.
plain as, yeah, exactly, Steve. They're as plain can be.
Oh, leave this guy alone. He didn't know. Communicating with the flight. By the way, he had a lot of hours. He should know better than that. Let's see. What else? What was I going to say here? Communicating with the flight attendant to confirm the cabin status and performing the descent checklist during final approach added to the pilot's workload, which was already heavy. Luckily, the cabin attendant, by looking out the window and just sensing things and being aware of the situation, realized that they were going to be landing soon, and she had already done all the things that she needed to do before landing, which was good. Let's see. The combination of the visual conditions and the planned continuation bias prompted the pilots to continue managing the height and speed deviations past the stabilized approach gate. Yeah, well past. When the aircraft passed 500 feet above the airport elevation, the pilots who were dealing with a heavy workload passed the stabilized approach gate without noticing it and continued the approach, which was de facto unstable. At the time of the flare, the aircraft no longer had enough energy to stop the rate of descent solely by increasing pitch attitude. And the instinctive reaction to increase the pitch attitude, combined with the hard landing, resulted in the aft fuselage striking the runway, causing major damage to the aircraft structure. And so basically, I think he was coming in so high and hot that the power was all the way back. And I would, in the jet, I would say all the throttles were back to idle. I don't know what the equivalent would be in a Dash 8, because I know it doesn't work quite the same way, but the power was not where it was supposed to be, where it normally would be on a
which is one of the stabilized approach criteria. Normally, you've got to have the throttles up away from idle.
Yeah, and so because of that, the speed in the report, which we'll have a link to in the show notes, talks about the fact that I think the computed approach speed was like 99 knots or something like that, and this had dropped below, at least 6 knots below that ref speed, and so they go back to, to flare the airplane, and there's nothing for it to work with as far as energy, and it just slammed tail first down onto on the runway. Let me show you a picture. I need to share again, and just bear with me here.
I'm just looking at this. They completed their final check as the aircraft was passing through 100 feet AGL.
Wow.
Yeah. That's not very
that's
at all.
That's
a little late.
A little late, for sure. Oh, here, I know what I need to do. Need to do this. Okay. Thank you, Liz.
Actually, I'm going to read that whole paragraph because that about sums it up for me. You can really kind of picture what was happening with the flight path here. It says, as the aircraft reached 200 feet AGL with a rate of descent of approximately 1,000 feet per minute still, airspeed of 120 knots, 1.5 degrees nose up. They set the flaps to 35 degrees and prop speed to 1,200 RPM. And then they completed the final check as the aircraft was passing through 100 feet. So,
yikes.
Yeah. Lots of stuff happening there on very short final.
I think you've just got to step this back to the point at which they should have started their descent briefing and descent checks and realized just how quickly the guy got behind the airplane, which is an odd thing to say. You don't get quickly behind the airplane. You're very slow when you're behind the airplane. The airplane's well ahead of him. And he just never caught up, did he? He just never got there. And he never got to the point either when he realized, this is stupid. What am I doing? I need to go around and do this properly.
Yeah, for sure. Everything was pointing toward, don't continue with this. You're unstabilized. You got to go around. Because you can always go around.
Well, that's right. And, it's so sad because this is exactly why stabilized approach criteria were brought in for everybody, and it's rammed home to everybody. And yet still people manage to blow straight through them without realizing. And
did you see
my shoulders?
Their schedule that day? There were 11 legs. Yeah, wow. That's what I thought. Wow. Okay. Oh, Liz is saying typical Canadian work ethic. Which, she's probably right. But this was not at the end. This wasn't the 11th segment. This was like the 4th or 5th. It was somewhere in the middle of their day when this happened. So, it's hard to say that fatigue had anything to do with this, but maybe it did. I don't know. But yeah, just poor decision making, I think, by the commander here in this incident.
And sadly also by the pilot monitoring, because he's the one that's not under quite so much pressure. He's the one that really ought to be sitting back, realizing that this is not going to work, and he should be calling the go-around. I mean, that's one of his jobs. If you realize that you haven't hit the stabilized criteria by 500 feet, you order the go-around, even if you're not flying the airplane or not the captain.
Right.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think I like that they talk about plan continuation bias in here. So, people don't have biases.
I think we used to call that.
What's that?
Press-on-itis.
Press-on-itis. Get home-itis. Press-on-itis. Yep.
Yeah. Give it a fancy name and it sounds a lot better.
Dave Ellison says in the live audience, 11 legs equals no time to go around in that workday. Yeah, we don't have time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
What I find interesting is the little comment, I can't quite find it, but I have it in memory, by the company saying that they had an absolute no criticism of anyone if ever they did a go-around. If you did a go-around, that was absolutely fine. They never had a complete policy of not criticising their crews, even if it was a badly flown approach and they were unstabilised, so they went around. They weren't going to get invited to, speak to the chief pilot in a one-sided conversation. So it was all self-imposed, this pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unnecessarily, completely.
Mm.
A non-punitive go-around policy.
Okay. That was what I was trying to say, but it.
And what? Well, that's Dale Williams helped us out in the live audio. That's why
in the report it says no fault, no blame. They dumbed it down for us pilots.
Just culture or something like that.
Yeah,
just
part of
safety
it.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. All right. So, yeah, basically, I don't know. Was this thing totaled or were they able to repair it? I'm wondering.
I don't know.
I forgot exactly what the G-force was when they contacted the runway, but it was something between 2 and 3 Gs, I think, when they hit.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be as much as I thought it would be. But of course, when you land on the fuselage and not the wheels, there's not a lot of
a little bit more force.
Yeah. There's not much to absorb the impact.
Nope. All right. If you want to read more about this incident, the full report is going to be in the show notes waiting for you. All right. Continuing to move on here, a preliminary report of that accident that we talked about earlier in Trigana, Boeing 737-400 freighter from Jakarta to Makassar, Indonesia, with 4 crew, was climbing out of Halim's runway 24, blah, blah, blah. When the crew stopped the climb at about 3,000 feet due to the failure of the right engine, the crew entered a hold while attempting to correct the problem and subsequently returned to Jakarta's Halim Airport for landing on runway 24 about 11:28, right before noon. About 35 minutes after departure, following touchdown, the right main gear collapsed and the aircraft skidded on the runway on the left main gear, nose gear, and right engine pod. During the last stages of the roll out, the aircraft veered off the runway and came to a stop with all gear collapsed. There were no injuries and the aircraft sustained substantial damage. On May 3rd, 2021, Indonesia's KNKT released their preliminary report. It says on board this flight were 2 pilots, 1 engineer, and 1 flight operation officer. According to the weight and balance sheet, the flight carried 16,672 kilograms of general cargo, and the takeoff weight was 60,695 kilograms, which is 133,835 pounds. The pilot command acted as pilot flying, and the second in command acted as pilot monitoring. At 10:51 local time, the aircraft departed runway 24, and about 2 minutes later, the pilot monitoring reported to the controller that the right engine had failed and they wanted to return. The aircraft approached landing with 1 engine in op and configured with flap 15 for landing, with the aircraft weight now about 131,000 pounds. The aircraft touched down with 1.79 G vertically and minus 5.4 G laterally. Then shortly, the right main landing gear failed. The aircraft stopped on the left. So I guess it had some kind of a side force when they touched down, not going straight down.
I don't know. I think it was more to do with the fact that although they don't make it clear that they didn't land on the runway. They landed in the undershoot, didn't they?
I can't remember if this is the one where they landed in the undershoot or not. But it let's see. I'm kind of scrolling down here.
Okay. I might be thinking of another.
There was another one in Africa, but I don't think that. That was in Africa. The one that I think that you're thinking about was somewhere in Africa. This was in Indonesia.
Okay, all right, forget that then.
So yeah, but I was thinking the same thing actually when I started reading this, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is a different one. an interesting thing. There's a picture here that shows the. Here, let me turn that and add it to the stream. The picture here shows the marks, the tire marks, the right main gear marks on the runway, and they're kind of going zigzaggy in a very tight pattern. So it looks like, I don't know if that was due to the hard touchdown and lateral G-forces or what, but
I think one of the wheels detached, so that might have been the wheel wobbling. One of the wheels came up and flew off down the airfield, I believe.
Okay. Winds weren't bad, 060 at 6 knots. And let's see, the aircraft, birds were in the vicinity, apparently. We've gotten that report. But apparently, you know, Liz, that they're always in the area, in the vicinity of the airport. The aircraft touched down in the touchdown zone. Okay, this was in the touchdown
all right.
zone.
I must be thinking of something else. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and then shortly after, both wheels of the right main landing gear detached. Both wheels of the right main landing gear detached. The controller noticed sparks appearing from the aircraft and pressed the crash bell. The controller informed the pilots of the other aircraft that the runway was blocked by the landing aircraft and identified fire on one of the engines. A few seconds later, the pilot monitoring called the controller whether there was any fire, and the controller replied that fire was visible on the left side of the aircraft. Anyway, the aircraft was substantially damaged. All 3 landing gear collapsed eventually. Both engine mounts broken. 2 tires and 1 brake assembly of the right main landing gear were detached, while the left main landing gear wheels remained intact until the aircraft stopped. And in this case, the captain, 34 years old, 6,228 hours total, 5,208 on type. So a lot of experience here on this 737. The pilot flying, the first officer, the pilot monitoring, he was 22, 1,255 hours total, and 1,084 hours on type. So relatively inexperienced. But he wasn't the one flying at the time. Anyway, so it has some more data here for what happened with the engine and such. But it looks like the engine wasn't, that was a problem, obviously. That's why they had to return. But as far as what happened to the airplane after it touched down, really has nothing to do with the fact that the right engine had failed, in my opinion, anyway.
No, you're right. And the weather wasn't that bad. It was a little hazy, a little light rain, but the wind was relatively light. A little variable, but very light. So, I don't know.
There's a picture of the airplane.
Did you let it get slow?
I don't know. We don't have all that information yet.
No.
More just factual about the events that happened once they touched down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when I looked at it, I thought 1.79 G vertically doesn't seem a lot, but I guess it must be. You know, I normally judge a landing by a rate of descent, not a number of Gs when you hit the road.
It would be interesting to know, Nick, how much like a 300 foot per minute descent G force is, or a 500 foot per minute. You know, it would be interesting to hear how that equates to G forces.
Yeah, perhaps maybe we'll find out in the final report.
Yeah. Perhaps there are some airplanes now with the sensors and everything else that can give you that kind of information. I don't know. Yes, Steph?
Well, it's not
I was going to say, I'm sure that's just a mathematical calculation.
Yeah. Okay, well, you're going to go ahead and do that for us then?
No, I don't like math.
Get your calculator out.
Get your slipstick out.
Right.
I think
There's my abacus.
Uber Frank in the chat room is working on it.
Perfect.
He's getting the calculator out, and he's going to do the calculations for us. Thank you.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Sorry, Frank, I didn't mean to pick on you. All right, moving on. This is an interesting one. Doesn't really. There's not a lot of information here. There are a lot of big question marks in my mind.
I feel like they omitted things. Whoever gave the information to this news source left out information that probably is kind of known. But anyway.
I would think so.
Just
Yeah,
makes sense.
this is from the Kansas City Star. Plane flew without a pilot for 1.5 miles, Nebraska cops say. So let's see. For 1.5 miles Tuesday evening, a vintage aircraft soared the Nebraska skies at heights of 200 feet. There was only one problem. No one was on board.
Oops.
A ghost plane. The plane was undergoing maintenance at the Central City Airport when, at some point, the airplane began to travel down the runway. Okay. Huh? Okay.
So they need to back up and say, at some point, it was undergoing maintenance, and someone hand propped it, and intentionally or
Oopsie.
not, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't get into the plane.
Throttle was open.
Yeah.
And it
Mags-
happened to be
mags
on the
on.
runway. So how
Yeah.
did it get to the runway?
Well, it depends. Was it just like a grass field somewhere? You
could
know,
have been.
could have been.
I don't know, but we do have some pictures of the sad aftermath.
This is
of
so
this
sad.
Yeah,
beautiful
it is, 'cause
J3.
they're great little airplanes. I
Yeah.
mean, 1937. What a fantastic age to get to.
But here's another one. This is one that I would enter in a photo contest. It's a nice sunrise in the background.
Beautiful scenery. Some
It is.
cornfield in
Absolutely,
Nebraska.
yes.
Yeah.
Could
you
you,
know, and
just turn that picture the other way around? It might look nicer.
Oh, you know, the airplane, you mean?
Yeah, well.
Or the whole thing upside down? I don't know.
Yeah, just
I
turn
could
upside
probably
down,
do that.
yeah.
Let me see if I can figure that out.
You know, I think they could probably do. Do you remember that older aircraft that got had some food left in it up in Alaska, and the bear attacked it
the
trying to get
bear,
in?
yeah.
I'm pretty sure they could probably just take some duct tape and fix this one up too. Just kind of smush
Absolutely.
it, smooth it
you
back
see,
out
it
a little
looks-
bit.
Well done, Jeff. That looks so much nicer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It does. There's still the wings
A little
crumpled.
crunchy, yeah, a little crunchy in the front end.
Yeah, and the wheels are. I don't think that's where the landing gear normally is.
No, you don't normally get two wheels on one side, do you?
No.
Oh.
That's
And they're such pretty little airplanes as well.
They are. Okay, let's put this thing back to where it was. There we go. Anyhow, that's a sad story. I don't know. It looks pretty much totaled, but I don't know. Maybe they can
I don't think that one's going to
rebuild
fly
it.
again. Probably not worth
No.
the cost of fixing it.
Yeah.
If you even could. I'm not sure.
Don't you just get a bicycle pump and inflate it again?
Yeah. Duct tape.
Don't think so.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. This next one was sent in by Robert Legal, or Legal. No, it's probably Legal. He said, pretty serious incident, and it's got some video, a YouTube video that goes along with it. And so now I'm going to smoothly go over here. Oops, I just did something I didn't mean to do. It's going to make it hard for me next time I need to show a picture. But anyway, here we go. What is this called? Boeing 737. Okay, here we go. Okay. Things are not going well. Video. Here we go. Open. Another one from VAS Aviation. Real Aviation Communications. On the 24th of April, 2021, ASL Airlines Boeing 737-400 performing flight out of Porto Lisbon, Portugal, was cleared for takeoff while a vehicle was performing a runway inspection. Pilots noticed the vehicle during takeoff and sent a safety report to authorities. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to read that in time, so I paused the video. And now, here we go. What do they call it? Depiction?
Recreation?
Recreation. Yeah.
Roger, taxi via Delta line up 35, reports ready.
Delta lining up 35, line report ready.
Yeah. Liz says she likes the flashing lights on the truck.
4495 now ready.
Very cool. Okay, the airplane's ready for
44,
departure.
905 and 90, roger, wind calm, runway 35, instruction Delta cleared for takeoff, remain on frequency.
Delta cleared for takeoff, runway 35, remain on frequency, confirm.
Soft speaker. Oh, wait. Should I back that up?
Yeah,
So-
for some reason it didn't have the voices of the...
Yeah.
Delta 6, takeoff runway 35.
Okay, it's clear for takeoff. And he's rolling down the runway, and then the vehicle says, "Is that an aircraft on the runway?" The tower says, "Affirm. Move and exit immediately." And the airplane lifts off right and flies right over the top of this
959,
vehicle.
identified entity, climb to flight level 240, proceed direct to Toulon.
Direct 240 and to Toulon, gravity 4959. DC 4959.
4959, go.
You cleared for takeoff and there was a car on the runway.
Quality 4959, yes, I was aware. I told him to leave the runway to the west.
Do we have to make a report for that? That's quite dangerous, you know.
Say again, please?
Do we have to report that incident because it's quite dangerous?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
If you wish, you can make the report, sir.
If you want
Roger,
to.
thank you.
Sorry.
And just confirm, will you make the report?
I don't know, sir. I'm still thinking about that. That's really a big incident, but I don't like to make report because I know that you will be in trouble, you know?
Just say all that
or
on
you can let an aircraft take off with a car on the runway, you know?
That's not cool.
4959, I'm aware of that. That wasn't me, but the ground operations are aware of the situation.
Would that not do nothing? Because if I reject the takeoff, I may be in the car. So it would be better to take off that case. But yeah, you have a radar on the ground to see or to check that?
No, it was a misunderstanding here in the tower. We have also ground radar.
Oh, shoot.
4959, Roger. We'll report the situation as well. You can contact now Madrid Control 136.355. Bye-bye.
136.355, equality 4979. As a commander, I need to do the report. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, yeah, it will. It will be a problem.
Gonna be a problem.
It was just a misunderstanding. I love that. Yeah, it was just...
Wait, well, I knew about him. I told him to exit to the left. What, into the
Oh, yeah,
grass?
I was aware.
Doesn't look
I was
like there's
aware.
a taxi right down there.
Wow. Yes, that's interesting. Very close.
Very, like, just kind of indifferent about all of it from the tower there, too. Yeah, we kind of knew about it, but it wasn't our fault.
It was almost like the tower was going, I wonder if I've got away with this. I wonder if he's going to get off the frequency without saying anything.
Right. Yeah.
That's that was that could have been a very major aircraft
Yes.
accident right there. Wow. Kelly says the tower controls the runway. Doesn't the tower control runways? It's the tower's fault. Yeah. I think that there's blame that can be spread out quite a bit, but all of it in that control tower, the ground controller and the tower controller. They have ground radar. They have every reason to know that vehicle's out there, and they forgot, I guess. I was doing an inspection.
Yeah, it sounds like the coordination between the two controllers, but most airfields, in my experience, most towers, there's only one guy controls the runway. The ground controller takes control of everything that's off the runway.
Yeah.
But the runway, vehicles and all, is down to one bloke. So I don't know. Perhaps they do it differently in Portugal.
I really hate it when they do that. When they split the responsibilities and the aircraft here couldn't hear any of this stuff and communication with the vehicle on the runway, and I don't like that.
How come the vehicle wasn't listening out to the tower frequency as well, for example?
Yeah.
To radio, so he could hear the guy being given a takeoff clearance. He would have instantly gone, hang on a minute, I'm on the runway.
I'm on the runway. I don't want to be on the runway if an aircraft is taking off. That sounds dangerous.
Exactly.
He eventually saw it was evident that there was an airplane on the runway coming right at him. Is that an aircraft on the runway? Yeah. Please leave the runway. Move out of their way.
Yeah, just vacate the runway, like into the grass.
Crazy. All right. Continuing on, our last item in our news notebook for this show. Airbus takes delivery of the first A321 XLR rear center fuel tank. This is from Simple Flying. Gustav Juliusson sent this in to us. The first rear center tank for the A321 XLR has been completed and handed over by Premium Aerotech. The new tank provides the additional fuel capacity required to send the XLR to the longest of ranges and is at the heart of the new Airbus aircraft. Would somebody like to continue for me? I'm going to see if I can find a photo that we can put on the screen.
Sure, I'll continue reading. It says the rear center tank, or RCT, is a crucial element of the Airbus A321 XLR, giving additional fuel capacity for the long-range narrow-body aircraft. 2.5 years ago, after Premium Aerotech was commissioned to produce it at its Augsburg factory, the unit is complete and has been handed over to Airbus. So they're congratulating each other about it.
Hooray!
Good job.
I was trying to see if there was any. Okay, here's what the technical aspects here. It will hold up to 12,900 liters of fuel. That's a useless measurement to me. Far more than several
nearly
additional
13 tons.
Far more than several additional center tanks can hold in the A321 LR, for example. And overall, the A321 XLR will be capable of holding around 40,000 liters of fuel.
Yeah, 40 tons will get you quite a long way.
Yeah. I think. Let's see. 40.
Ranges up to 4,700 nautical miles.
I think it's
That's
approximately 10,666 gallons. And how much does fuel weigh per gallon?
6.8 pounds.
6.8. So that's about a total of 72,500 pounds, roughly. That's pounds. That's a lot of fuel for narrow body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like you'll be able to go directly from London down to the Caribbean, from probably Paris, most places in Europe to New York. Yeah, it's a long way.
Wow.
I don't think people realize quite how complicated fuel tanks have to be. There is an awful lot of problems if fuel sloshes around in a big tank. So there are all sorts of baffles have to be fitted to stop the fuel from shifting around if you accelerate, decelerate, bang too much. Yeah, absolutely. And then gauging fuel is also a big problem to get it accurate. I remember when we first got the 340, it took quite a few years to tweak the fuel gauging system, and we could have 1 or 2% errors, which may not seem a lot. We generally knew what we had on board because we measured how much had been put on. But that's, could have been 1 or 2 tons of fuel in error. So that, 1 or 2% is it can be quite a lot. So it requires clever design. And of course, this fits in the belly of the aircraft underneath the passengers. So it's got to be, protected from the passengers and also between the cargo hulls. So, yeah, it's a clever piece of kit. And of course, being below the feed from to the engines, which are where the wings are, feeds to the engines, you've got to always pump the fuel out. So you've got to have a really fail-safe pump system, because if the centerline tank fails to pump, you just can't gravity feed that fuel. It's going to be stuck there. So you've instantly lost 12 tons of fuel, which is going to be a big problem if you're relying on that towards the end of your flight. Generally speaking, the centerline tank is the first tank to feed and just tops up the wing tanks until it's empty. But it's an interesting piece of kit and gives that airplane a long range.
Sure does. I mean, one of the flight segments they're showing an example of on that map is Houston, Texas to Hawaii. That's a very long flight, and most of it over the Pacific Ocean, which is a place where you wouldn't want that tank to stop doing it. It's
No, we had centerline tanks in the 340, so we knew all about that, and unusable fuel if it failed to feed.
All right, very good. Well, that's it for news for this episode, at least this half. And let's get on with this. The Getting to Know Us segment. Look at all those smiling faces. And Steph holding that very scary looking needle.
Yeah, she's not smiling in that one, is she?
Oh, I'm definitely smiling in that one.
I think she is, but it's an evil smile.
That needle is just for drawing up medications.
It's just for you, Mr. Bond.
Yeah. I can tell you from personal experience, it doesn't feel good to stick that particular needle into the side of your finger.
How about someone's back?
No, we wouldn't use that one for someone's back. But
what would you use that one for?
Drawing up medications out of bottles. It has a large gauge so that so it doesn't take 5 years to draw up, a cc of lidocaine.
So
through a
that's
tiny
why
little
you
straw.
said that's for drawing out medications.
Yes.
Earlier.
Yes.
So how do you get it from there into? You put a different.
You
needle
put a different needle on it.
Okay.
One that's not nearly so robust.
How do you squirt it into a smaller syringe? I was thinking to myself. But,
we're not that complicated when it comes to this stuff, Nick.
Well, you never know.
Yeah. Well, Steph,
Yeah.
how have you been?
Good, busy. Getting kind of settled in at my new day job, my new practice. So that's all going well. Always seems like there's a bunch of small technical hurdles to be overcome anytime you start a new job. It's like passwords don't seem to work quite right, or the computer that you're using, the printer or it's not connected to any printers anywhere, or you can't get your prescriptions to send correctly. So it's been, kind of just ironing out those little wrinkles. But other than that, it's been great. Seen some familiar patients and some new ones to me, and just getting set up and settled in. Did some flying last weekend. Excuse me. And just kind of normal Saturday, Sunday of flying, but interesting in that there were other events happening in and around the Charlotte area in South Carolina, notably the PGA events over at Quail Hollow, which is in the Charlotte area. And they had one of the Goodyear blimps there to provide aerial photography services. And when the Goodyear blimp is in town, it moors itself at the same airfield where I fly skydivers. So that's always kind of interesting. We call it the world's largest tetrahedron. So when it's on the ground, it's always pointing into the wind. It's great.
You know which way
you know exactly where the wind's coming from.
Love it.
But we did get a quick chance on a weather hold, on a wind hole actually, to chat with one of their pilots. So that was pretty interesting to learn a little bit about the Goodyear blimp.
I'm curious. Did they tell you what wind limits they have to work to?
35 knots on the ground.
Oh,
which was significantly higher than we were thinking.
Yeah.
Because we were on a wind hold because it was gusting to 20 miles an hour on the...
How about when they're flying?
It doesn't matter.
Well, it does if you want to go somewhere.
Well, if you want to go somewhere, for sure. So, no, he said 35.
If you're over the coast and it blew you out to sea and you couldn't come home again, it's got that would be a problem.
It's got 3 engines on it. It does have propulsion.
Yeah, but it's a big fat balloon.
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere very fast.
Don't get started on the balloon stuff. Oh boy, here we go.
I know, right?
Aerostat.
It was very, very. Actually, I was going to pull up. I did make some notes because I want to make sure I quote this correctly because I thought this was fairly impressive. Did I do it on this phone? Oh,
you should have done a recording.
I should have. I know I wasn't. Well, I didn't think we were going to get a chance to really talk to anyone. We just kind of wandered over to take a look at it, and they came to talk to us. It was something like 300,000 cubic feet of helium that they use to keep it inflated. Wow. It's a lot. Mm-hmm.
Quite.
Yeah. And it was interesting watching their pre-flight checks. They have like 20 minutes worth of things to do. A lot of it's control surface checks. A lot of it has to do with their weight and balance because they have a lot of ballast kind of holding it down towards the ground. So it's removing that, it's making sure that all of the air is, all of the helium is in the correct, I guess, portions of the the structure.
Make sure the
Aerostat. Yeah, that's what I
sandbags
was thinking
aren't
of.
leaking and
Yeah.
things
Well,
like
it's, they
that.
you know they removed a bunch of sandbags. They removed a bunch of water from tanks. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Where were they based, Steph? Somewhere on the East
So
Coast?
they have 3. One is based in. One's in California, I believe one is in Florida, and one is in Ohio. But this one particular one was in Ohio and going back to Florida because one of them was in annual or something, some major check.
Oh, okay. So obviously Akron, because that's the headquarters of Goodyear.
Goodyear.
And then I was wondering if they knew, was it Alpha Bravo Charlie? Is that what he called himself? The mechanic, the engineer?
Mm-hmm.
In Carson,
Oh, yes. Yep.
California?
Yeah. So, probably.
Interesting. He probably knows. I would imagine it's a pretty small community. Even
Yeah.
if
So they
they're
did
in a
the
different base.
They did the golf tournament on Saturday, and then they did the NASCAR race in Darlington on Sunday.
Cool.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
did they explain how their advertising board works?
We didn't talk about that, no.
Because I would have asked them to put APG crew or something on the side and take a picture of it.
Sure.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I mean, it was
I'm sure they
daylight,
could
so we weren't really thinking about the, the light up stuff on the side of the... But that's actually a pretty interesting system, from what I understand. I just don't know any details about it.
Yep. And Kelly in the chat room is telling us Long Beach, California, actually Carson, California, to be exact, on the east side of the 405. Yeah, we have actually have an APG community member that sent us in some feedback a few episodes ago, Kelly. He works on that thing. He's a mechanic.
Yeah, I wonder if he could get a picture of us, of our logo or APG on the side of
Should
his.
be easy peasy,
Yeah, of his machine.
The least that he could do.
ABC, come on, do it for us.
All right. So, anything else, Steph, before we move on?
No, that's about it for me.
All right. Nick, how about yourself? You've been busy?
I'm way too busy, to be fair. This has been a hectic week, but I have enjoyed it because most of it's self-imposed. I finished off producing the pictures for the big photo shoot I did last week, and then did another photo shoot this morning. And there you can see a picture of Buddy, the subject. Buddy. Yes, sitting in
Adorable.
a field of buttercups.
Yeah.
But a lovely, a very solid Labrador, and a very nice lady owner. Got some great pictures of him, I think. So that's been what I did this morning. Did a lot of walking, so I'm actually suffering a little bit from cramp right now in my legs. Playing a lot of bowls. Won every match so far, including the first round of the National Champion of Champions, so pleased with that. You never want to get knocked out on the first round, do you? So at least I'm through to the second round of that. And a game tomorrow, although the weather doesn't look brilliant. But no, that's been it. That's about my week. Sadly, nothing much aviation orientated, which is a shame. But there you go. But that's what happens when you're retired.
Yeah. Did you want to mention that someone in our aviation podcasting community had a very special event today?
Yes, that's a good idea because we were all asked to produce a little video for our lovely friend Owen, who has got married today to the superb and very pretty Agnes. I think that's how you correctly pronounce her name. And so congratulations to them. Well done, you two, from us all. We wish you a long and happy life together. Congratulations. Marvellous. Not often we get a marriage in the podcasting world, is it?
No, but
No.
There's going to be another one at the end of this year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
In the APG community. One Stephen Ivey.
Oh, of course.
I hope I'm allowed to say that on.
Well, it's a bit late.
Too late.
Now.
Well, congratulations.
I'm meeting with him tomorrow, actually. So no.
Excellent.
day
No,
after
I did
Sunday.
not know that.
Yeah, Sunday. Yeah, yeah. He's engaged to be married. So
Well, that's
anyway.
marvellous.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, sir? Before
not from me. So,
talk a little bit. Not a lot to say for me either. I was on a 4-day trip, Monday through Thursday. Flew with First Officer Jeff. It's always a lot of fun to have fun with that. First Officer Jeff and Captain Jeff, and then basically say that I've decided to call all the flight attendants Jeff as well, just to make it easy on everyone. Anyway, he's a really nice, laid-back, fun to fly with First Officer. So had a great trip, and weather was. I can't think of any time that the weather was bad or severe or anything like that. It was a pretty good weather trip. So, yeah, went to Oklahoma City the first night, Bradley International up in Windsor Locks, Connecticut, the second night, and Rochester, New York, the third night, and had some good barbecue at Dinosaur in Rochester. Anyway, great trip, and also, I have to apologize to one of our APG community members who sent me some gin from his hometown in Germany, Stefan. I'm sorry, man. I don't check the APG PO box as often as I should, and it's just a small one. It doesn't have room for parcels, so when somebody does send a parcel like this awesome gin that you sent me that I'll never get to taste, they put a little notice in there, and they basically give me a short period of time to take that little piece of paper and go up to the front desk of the post office and have them fish it out of the wherever they store it in the back of the post office. And unfortunately, I didn't know that you
Otherwise,
had
they
sent me
drink your
anything.
gin.
Apparently, well, they said that they sent it back. I don't know. I don't think it's going back to Germany, honestly. Don't know where it actually ended up, but not to me. So I do apologize, Stefan. Very, very nice of you, kind of you, for doing that. And it's not the first time, I have to admit, that I've missed out on a parcel because I don't check it every day or every week, usually every month. So what have I done about that, Liz asks. Well, what I've done is I've changed the address, the P.O. box, on all the references to the snail mail address for the APG on the website to my home address. So for you stalkers out there, now you know exactly where I live. Although it wouldn't take a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist to figure it out by just doing a search on Google. I'm sure that my address is out there. But now it's going to be delivered to my home address, and I'm not going to miss gin again, Liz says. That's for sure.
Well, and that's so sad because that is a particularly nice gin. I mean,
it is.
Stefan gave me one, and I was so delighted with it. I got my boys to give me another bottle of it for Christmas.
The Gin Soul?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think that one was from Hamburg.
Yes.
And I think that what he sent me was a different one from his hometown. I don't think Hamburg was his hometown. So it was even a more special one in a special bottle, apparently.
No.
Yeah. So I'm sure he spent a lot of money on that too. I am so sorry.
Hopefully it did make it back to him so he can gift it to someone who will actually retrieve it from there.
Well, if I were him, I'd just drink it.
Probably.
Yeah. So think about, before you send something to me or any of us, well, it's not going to happen now. Now it's going to go directly to my house, so it's okay. We're good. But I was going to say, think about, sending parcels to me, because or if you do, send me an email or something and let me know so that I'll, be better about checking it. So that's that. And that's all I had to say about getting to know us for this week. So
thanks, Forrest.
Because
that's all I have to say about that.
Oh, Coffee Fund. Thank you, Liz. I see now what you were doing. I got it. Okay. I'm a little slow, but I'm pretty stupid. Let's get on with the Coffee Fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Sing it, Liz. She's singing in my ear. The Coffee Fund, Jeff Smith, the one that you all can hear singing, and me, is singing the Java Jive because that's what we do when we talk about our wonderful Coffee Fund cadre or Coffee Bar Club members. It's your way to support the show financially if you have a few extra dollars or whatever your monetary denomination is hanging around and you want to support us. A couple different ways to do that. One is the Coffee Fund Classic method. And since the last episode, we have two recurring donators to the Coffee Fund Classic. We have Mazuz Karim and George Leslie. Oh, well, hello, Mazuz. Mazuz or George, or both? Are they in the chat room? Mazuz was, okay. All right, I know he was in the chat room for that other show, too. And, yeah, he gets around. Well, thank you, Mazuz. We do appreciate it. And you as well, George. The other way to do it is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. And since the last episode, we have two new producers, Mohammed Youssef and Stephen Ivy. We were just mentioning Stephen just a moment ago. Yeah, he should be saving for a wedding, Liz. What's he doing giving us money?
Maybe he got
What's wrong
a raise.
with you, Stephen? Huh?
Maybe he got a raise.
Oh, yeah, maybe
Good
he
times
got a
ahead.
raise.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, Liz is suggesting perhaps it's his fiance that's giving us the money.
Ooh, marrying money. Way to go.
Yeah, ooh. Way to go, Stephen. All right. Well, thank you, Mohammed and Stephen, for becoming patrons of the show. We do appreciate it. If you want to learn more about how you, dear listener, can also be part of that great group of folks that support us, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. Okay, now we're going to go right into this week's installment of the Plane Tales. And so here we go. Take it away, old pilot.
The Old Pilot's Plane Tales. Leaving them behind. It was the 14th of October 1975, and a Vulcan V bomber of 9 Squadron Royal Air Force was on its way from the chilly autumnal winds and rain of Lincolnshire in England to the warm and sunny little island of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. On board were 7 crew members, which is 2 more than the normal complement of 2 pilots in the cramped cockpit and the 3 rear crew members, the nav radar, nav plotter, and air electronics officer in the lower rear compartment. They appear to have been accompanied by a couple of supernumerary crew members who would have been seated on rudimentary jump seats forward of the nav radar and electronic officers' positions. Suffice to say, the crew compartment, both forward and aft, were not spacious before the additional occupants were included. Flying with every seat filled must have made the aircraft uncomfortably cramped. However, they were headed towards the sunny Isle of Malta, and I have no doubt that all were looking forward to having a drink and eyeing up the pretty ladies who frequented the area known as the Gut. Officially called Straight Street, in Valletta, it was an alley full of bars, music halls, restaurants, and dodgy hotels that combined a heady concoction of music, cold beer, and hot women of dubious virtue. Regardless, I'm sure that everyone on board was looking forward to their arrival. As they flew down the west coast of Italy and out over the blue Mediterranean, the captain would undoubtedly have been gauging the ability of his co-pilot, who was not part of his normal crew. His regular co-pilot had asked to be replaced on this trip because his wife was about to give birth. The stand-in was offered the chance to land at their destination, RAF Lucca, a decision that would subsequently be described in the official report that followed as imprudent. RAF Lucca was a wartime airfield built to accommodate the stringbags, Spitfires and Hurricanes that would defend the brave Maltese people during the atrocious bombing onslaught that they received in the Second World War. Bravery so remarkable that King George presented the island as a whole with the George Cross to bear witness to the heroism and devotion of its people. The runways at Lucca were limited by space. The island is small and overcrowded, and they were not designed for the generation of jet fighters and bombers that now use them. As a result, landings had to be flown accurately, with touchdowns made on the numbers at the beginning of the runway, or stopping might be a problem. The direction of the landing also made a difference, as the Vulcan would be facing a downhill slope on the runway that would add to their stopping distance. Having said that, the airfield was regularly used by Phantoms, VC-10s, Nimrods and others. It just needed care and accuracy a little beyond the normal. It appears, however, that the captain didn't adequately brief his co-pilot on the problems of landing on short downhill runways, which can present a variety of unusual visual cues to someone not familiar with the issues. He had also decided that they wouldn't use their large drag chute on landing, adding to the pressure on the other pilot to ensure that the landing was accurate. The captain monitored the approach, but it seemed that his co-pilot was having difficulties. First high, he used air brakes, but then was late in applying power to check the increasing rate of descent. Realizing that they were coming down way too fast, the captain took control, applied full power and pitched the aircraft up, but only a second or two before impact. Far too late to prevent the aircraft from landing heavily short of the runway. In the final moments of the approach, the left wing dropped as the Vulcan sank into the undershoot, and the landing impact drove the main gear up into the wing before it detached and fell onto the runway. An aircraft spotter remembers that the Vulcan was lower than usual, and he heard a deafening sound of metal scraping on concrete as the huge aircraft landed heavily, bounced, and then with wrecked undercarriage came back down onto the runway. After scraping along the concrete for some distance, the Vulcan climbed away, and the tower controller advised the captain of the damage and that his aircraft was now on fire. He replied that he would attempt to belly land the aircraft and requested that the runway be covered in foam. He was never going to get the chance, though. The chance to land a second time. The fierce fire from the punctured wing was uncontrollable, and in addition, the damage prevented the crew from raising the gear. The captain managed to fly the crippled bomber around the circuit, but the fire took hold and was overwhelming the structure. Flaming debris was falling, and then, control lost, the vast aircraft descended into the ground, breaking up as it did so. In the last moments, the two pilots ejected, leaving their stricken colleagues in the rear of the cabin to their fate. All 5 were killed when the aircraft impacted the ground. The burning aircraft fell on the town of Zabar, an event that is literally burned into the memories of those who lived there. On impact, the remaining fuel tanks burst, sending a wave of flame across the small town, covering more than 100 houses. Miraculously, only 1 life was lost, although 20 others received injuries, some serious. The Board of Inquiry was highly critical of the captain's actions, which were deemed negligent, despite the fact that he had dealt with another serious problem very well only a few years previously. In that case, an engine disintegration severely damaged his aircraft at low level. He climbed away on 3 engines, but the damage progressed to a second engine, and with his aircraft systems failing, he successfully ordered his rear crew to abandon the aircraft. Once everyone was clear, including his co-pilot, he finally ejected from the crippled bomber. The escape provision for the rear crew of the Vulcan, indeed most of the British V-bombers, had been a matter of contention for many years. The provision of ejector seats for the pilots was accepted, but the lack of adequate escape facilities for the rear crew had been heavily criticised. The original concept was that the whole forward part of the fuselage containing the crew compartment of the Vulcan would, in the event of an emergency, be jettisoned, allowing all the crew to descend together under a massive parachute, in a similar manner to the system developed for the American F-111 bomber. However, Avro had been unable to come up with a suitable design to accommodate this, so the requirement was quietly dropped. This short-sighted approach was very quickly demonstrated back in 1956 when a grand world tour of the RAF's first Vulcan, X-Ray Alpha 897, ended in disaster at Heathrow Airport in London. With the air officer commanding No. 1 group in the co-pilot seat, the Vulcan attempted to land in low cloud and fog, to be greeted by a large reception committee of press and dignitaries. One can only imagine the pressure on the captain to get this aircraft safely on the ground. Not equipped with an ILS, an instrument landing system, the crew were talked down using a ground-controlled approach, and when the controller advised them that they were going above the glide path, they overcorrected with disastrous results. Impacting in the undershoot, they destroyed their undercarriage and the Vulcan's control surfaces attached to the rear of the delta wing. Unable to maintain control of the aircraft, the captain and the AOC ejected, leaving their rear crew behind to die in the subsequent crash. For reasons that defy logic, the air traffic controller who conducted the talk-down was blamed for the disaster, despite claims that AOC 1 Group was ordered 3 times to divert away from Heathrow because of the bad weather. The full result of the inquiry was classified secret, and even when revealed after 50 years, apparently failed to adequately apportion blame. When Martin of Martin Baker, the renowned ejector seat company, heard of the deaths in this crash, he reportedly became incandescent with anger. When the escape capsule idea for the Vulcan had been abandoned, he had lobbied hard to have ejector seats for all crew members fitted. He had gone as far as developing rearward-facing ejector seats for the Valiant, and initially the RAF were supportive of his work, even supplying him with the nose section of a Vulcan to assist him. He designed an ingenious command ejector system that could sequence all 3 rear occupants through a single escape hatch without risk of collision. The design included self-tightening straps, self-folding tables, and canted seats so that the escape trajectory would be safe. A successful demonstration was performed, but for reasons only known to the upper echelons of the RAF and the Air Ministry, his proposal was turned down, a decision that would condemn many aviators to their deaths, including pilots who remained with their doomed aircraft too long whilst trying to give time for their rear crewmen to escape. The system that was considered suitable might well have been designed by Heath Robinson. Once ordered to abandon the aircraft, the rear crew would have to swivel their seats towards the access door in the floor. The door was blown open by 3,000 pounds per square inch of air in jacks, and the access ladder attached to the door jettisoned so that it became a smooth slide. Cushions in the back of the crew's seats would inflate to push the occupant out and towards the door, so that they could slide down in turn. Attempting this with the nose gear down was problematic, as it was directly in the way of a safe escape, and crewmen were briefed to grab a door strut as they exited in an attempt to swing around it. Questions concerning the adequacy and inequality of the V-bombers' escape systems were even raised in Parliament when it was asked if it was morally right to continue to send up aircrews in V-bombers, knowing full well that if the aircraft gets into difficulties at low level, the crew have next to no chance of bailing out. Does not the benefit of hindsight prove today how utterly wrong was the decision taken 4 years ago not to adapt the V-bombers with ejector seats? The answer was that apparently the most careful consideration and thought were given to the problem, but the final decision resulted in no action being taken. I believe that the reasons for this were a combination of cost and the time lost, both in withdrawing the aircraft from service and because of the work on adaptation. The Lords who discussed this went on to remark that between 1959 and 1964, a period not including the 2 tragic crashes I have mentioned, there were 6 accidents involving 24 personnel, 17 of whom were killed. Out of the 17, only 2 were pilots, and both, it is believed, stayed with their aircraft in an attempt to save their crew. I personally have great pride in the Royal Air Force, but decisions that senior officers and those in government have made at times leave me completely at a loss. However, a lack of concern for a crew's well-being was not just limited to the Royal Air Force. And let me tell you about an aircraft that Main Man Micah mentioned to me. The Douglas F-3D Skyknight, later to be called the F-10 Skyknight. Not an aircraft that I was familiar with. The Skyknight was not intended to be a nimble dogfighter, but a carrier-borne, missile-equipped night fighter, packing a powerful radar system with an extra crew member to operate it, a couple of cannons and the new Sparrow Mark I missile. It flew in both the Korean and Vietnam Wars, where it amassed a creditable number of night kills against MiG-15s, despite the limitations of those early missiles, whilst only losing a single Skyknight. In the Vietnam War, it was modified to serve as an electronic warfare aircraft, where its large interior proved suitable for carrying the equipment required. The Skyknight was a fairly large, straight mid-wing design with side-by-side seating for the crew and powered by a pair of rather unimpressive Westinghouse J-34 turbojets. Because of its unflattering looks, blunt, tubby, and with a low-slung pair of intakes, it was nicknamed Willie the Whale, or more unflatteringly by the US Marines, the Drut, a name that becomes obvious when read backwards. What was different about the Skyknight was its escape system, one that I have discovered was also used in the Douglas A3 Sky Warrior, an escape tunnel. Despite having been built and first flown in 1948, less than a year before the Martin Baker Mark I ejector seat was first tested, Douglas used the roomy cockpit to design its unorthodox escape system. Part of the decision was made because early ejection seats weren't considered by Douglas to be suitable for side-by-side ejections, and the other was a result of an attempt to save weight. The escape tunnel led down and aft from the cockpit, behind the seats and exiting from a spot on the underside between the engines. In the event that the crew had to bail out, they would first depressurize the cockpit and then pivot their seats towards each other. Whilst the pilot tried to keep control of the aircraft, the other crew member would get out of his seat, face aft, and kick open the escape chute door, which was supposed to fall down the chute and away. Then, grasping a horizontal bar, he would swing into the chute feet first and slide out of the belly of the aircraft, hopefully followed by the pilot. This was only really going to work if the aircraft was more or less straight and level, and not in some unusual attitude where gravity might not be cooperating. New arrivals to the Sky Knight would be required to practice this bailout drill on an aircraft jacked up for the purpose and slide down onto a pile of mattresses. If the first crew member didn't get clear quickly, he would provide additional cushioning for the pilot, who would stomp on him as he followed him out. Some confidence in the system was obtained in part from a series of live extractions by parachutists during tests before the Sky Knight entered service at speeds between 139 and 444 miles an hour. For the highest speed tests, the F-3D could reach 530 miles an hour. A crash test dummy was used and instructed not to open the parachute until between 5 and 20 seconds after leaving the aircraft for deceleration purposes. This escape system was also used to deliver special forces behind enemy lines, and pilots recall dropping them in clandestine night operations. One Marine pilot remembers performing one such mission and tells the story of tapping his radar on the head, whereupon he left like a shot. He praised them for undertaking such a mission, and although 2 drops ended up with broken bones, that was from the night landing in the jungle, not the jump from the Sky Knight. Despite the ingenuity of this type of escape system, in the end, the almost universal adoption of ejector seats in combat aircraft came, I'm sure, as a relief to everyone.
So, what do you think, Steph? You up for the Sky Knight ejection system or chute? Yeah.
Hold on one second.
There we go. Sure.
Fix my audio.
That would be a jumper dumper system par excellence, I'd have thought.
Crazy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, my stuff is trying to.
Have we lost Steph?
No, I couldn't. I was on the wrong screen to get my audio back, and I was frantically trying to do that as we came out of the plane tails there, and had a little bit of a technical/user failure in my ability to do that. So
not a problem.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different system.
They make it sound like an escape tunnel out of a prisoner of war camp, don't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, which airplane was it, Nick, that they had to slide down something and grab onto one of the landing gear, nose gear?
Well, that was the Vulcan.
The Vulcan?
If they had the nose leg down, the nose leg came down right behind the slide, the chute. So if they slid down it, they were going to impale themselves on and get entangled with the nose gear. So they were supposed to try and grab one of those struts and swing themselves to one side as they went down. Basically, if you tried to escape with the gear down, it was nigh impossible. Apart from the fact that a manual escape system just takes time, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't matter how quickly you do it. You've got to. The guys, I don't think the guys wore their parachutes all the time. I might be wrong. They might have, had them in the seats, but they might have had to buckle them on. I don't know. And then,
we have to abandon our aircraft here. Quick, get the parachute.
Yeah,
that seems
absolutely.
inefficient.
Whereas
when you've got an
the
emergency.
pilots up the front, had ejector seats. So, fine and beaut. But it was just one of those design decisions that defeats me, because it was obviously somebody said, well, it's not nearly so important that the rear crew get out. As long as we get the pilots out, that'll be fine.
Save the important people here, the ones that you need to.
Yeah, that's unacceptable, and it's very honorable of the 2 pilots that did die out of the 17, you said, I believe, that they suspect that they stayed with the jet just to try to save it.
Yeah,
Save lives.
Tried to keep it airborne for long enough to get everyone out. But and those two crashes, particularly the first one, the one with AOC 1 group on board. Let me explain. The Air Force was in those days, and still is to a certain extent, divided up into groups. So all the bombers were in one group. So this would have been the equivalent of Bomber Harris in the Second World War. The air officer commanding one group was the guy in charge of all the bombers in the Air Force and all the V bombers. Very important job. And this was the pride of the fleet, this first Vulcan to do a world tour. It was a big event, and then all the press and MPs, dignitaries were waiting for them at Heathrow. But they had a talk-down break off of 300 feet, and they were in weather that was well worse than that. So, you can only imagine what pressure there was on the pilot, with the AOC probably insisting, I don't know if he did or not, but I suspect he might have been putting pressure on to get him into Heathrow so he could attend this big event.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, they ended up killing everyone behind them. They survived, destroyed the airplane, killed everyone behind them. Just appalling.
That is.
Yeah. I'm very sad. A very sad moment in Air Force history. Oh, right, I was just going to, one final note. After the Luca accident, I'm pretty certain that they put a ban on co-pilots from flying the Vulcan below 10,000 feet.
Just not allowed.
How are you gonna learn?
Get the experience.
Yeah. So the only captains only below 10,000 feet. So I'm going, really?
Dumb. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, people do knee jerks. I'm sure it eventually changed back, but yeah. Anyway, interesting.
Okay. Hey, Steph, if you need to leave us, please do.
Yeah, it's probably about that time. Are you guys going to continue on a little bit longer?
Yeah, we may knock out one or two pieces of feedback, and then
you got one. You got to get Nick's
shut her out. Yeah.
Feedback on, but I might leave you guys to do that, and we'll see how things go for part 2. I'm not sure.
All right.
Able to join or not.
Yeah, if you can join us for that, whenever that happens, we're not sure yet. Please feel free to.
All right.
We'll let you know.
We'll do. All right.
All right.
So long.
Thanks, Steph.
Good night. Cheers,
All
y'all.
right. Catch you later, Steph.
Cheers.
Yep.
Okay. So now it's just the two old guys again.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. And it's just for a little bit. Don't worry, people. We're just going to be knocking out a couple of feedbacks here, and then we'll call it quits for part 1 of the 2-parter. And let's see. I think I want to do this. This is actually something that I was hoping that we could do with both Nick and Rick here at the same time. And we were hoping it was going to be today because we keep putting this one off. But it's not going to happen, but we're going to sort of make it happen. We're going to force this. We're going to watch this video, and then we're going to get Nick's reaction. And then when I have Rick on, I'm going to get his reaction to the same footage that we're going to watch. The feedback music intro. Oh yeah. Okay. Nah, I'm not going to do the feedback intro music thing. Okay. Just pretend that we just did the feedback sound clip. Okay. And here we go. It is this one here. Let me open it up and show here. Okay, we're watching the right wing of
Geez, that dinosaur's noisy, isn't it?
It is.
I can't hardly hear myself think.
Are you talking about that dinosaur that we see in the distance below?
No, what you see down there is a beautiful, sleek French lady.
Ah, and what model is this one, Nick?
It looks like a 600 to me.
340, A340 600 with Virgin Atlantic colors.
Yeah, looks nice, doesn't it?
Got the chemtrail switch on.
Yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. is. But it's kind of the airplane that we're getting the camera viewpoint seems like it's pulling ahead of the 340.
You think? You sure that's not an optical illusion?
Well, it might be. This is from Hanover Spotter 2015, by the way. To give credit for this video. And again, I don't know why I'm even having the audio from this video on, because it's just a bunch of noise. So I gotta turn it off.
I noticed the title, Extreme Close-Up Air-to-Air. I'm going, no, that's not extreme
it's not.
at
Yeah,
all.
that's a ridiculous title. Sorry. That is not.
That is the standard 1,000 foot separation, I suspect.
Yeah. I mean, it almost looked like about 2,000. I didn't look even 1,000 foot separation. So basically what we're looking at was just two airplanes, probably somewhere over the Atlantic, cruising along. And the difference there is that the 747's cruise speed, economical settings or cruise settings are a little bit higher than the cruise Mach for the A340-600.
Well, you might think that, Jeff, but I actually took a look into this particular event.
Okay.
And I discovered that the 747 was just trying to make up time and burning fuel like it was going out of fashion. I mean, 12 tons an hour. What a horrendous burn rate to be able to maintain that speed. Whereas the French lady down there is so much more economical. And anyway, they were actually on a transatlantic route and being held up by a Boeing 767 ahead of them that was only able to do max chat 0.78. So, over the Atlantic, you can't overtake. You're all going the same speed. So there was a 76, really slow old, really old
Where are you
thing.
getting all this information? I think you're just making this stuff up.
No, I did a lot of investigation into this. Took me ages.
I don't think you're being honest with us here.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I
No, I'm
take
not sure.
exception to that opinion. But
okay.
I'm sure that was the case. I'm
sure.
absolutely sure. Yeah, I'm sure that was it. Yeah, some old Boeing was holding up that sleek Airbus.
Nigel, your good friend over there, he's
not my good friend anymore.
BS.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. I think you went too far, Nick, because at first I was actually believing you, and then I thought, wait a minute,
fair enough.
This can't be.
But let me just assure you that one of the reasons the Airbuses used to cruise at around 0.82 was because much above that you started incurring critical drag rise because you get Mach waves started forming on the aircraft, the drag increases.
8.2 is actually pretty good. That's pretty good pace, I think.
Oh, we could do 8.6, but 8.2, yeah, it was our normal cruise. And at that, we were using in the 600, about 9 tons an hour. The 747s were up over 12 tons an hour.
Wow.
So that's the difference. If you brought your cruise speed back just a little, you could save all that fuel and you were going green.
There you go. Bump, ba-dum. Going green.
You haven't got that button ready then?
No, I didn't. I wasn't expecting that at all. So I'll add it in post.
Yeah. Nobody seems to believe me. I find that very rude. We've got some very rude people.
Your veracity level right now is at an all-time low.
Well, there you go.
Hard to say.
More fool you. No.
Okay. Sure. I think that would be a good one and a good way to end this thing. Let's see. We're going to skip to item number 6, Nick. And this was sent in from Devin Moore, asking, well, he sent some audio feedback. So I'm not going to tell you what he is asking. He's going to ask it himself. Here we go.
Hello, APG crew. My name is Devin. and I'm currently an F-35 avionics maintainer at Hill Air Force Base and currently TDY at Nellis for Operation Neptune. Quick question for Jeff and Nick. When I got to Hill in 2018, I noticed a large disconnect between the pilots and the maintainers. We never really interact unless we're launching, recovering, or doing a red ball. Now, over my 3 years in the Air Force, I've heard stories of pilots and crew chiefs and even avionics technicians. We're almost on a first name basis with the pilots outside of work and had a good bond between each other. Now, my question is, when you guys were in the Air Force, how was it like between the pilots and the maintainers? And what do you think is causing the disconnect? And in classic fashion and in tradition for aviation of the Air Force, here's a cold one. Cheers, everybody. Have a good one.
Ah, nice. Nice little effect at the end.
I love
there.
it. Yeah. I am having a cold one. Thank you.
Are you? I'm not, unfortunately. So you want to tackle this one first, Nick? The relationship between mechanics, engineers, crew chiefs, whatever you want to call it, in your experience in the military.
Yeah, it is slightly difficult because all the pilots are commissioned officers, all but the engineering officers who were in charge of the various engineering departments. They were the only engineering officers, and everyone below that were non-commissioned. And certainly when I was in the Air Force, there was an element of a division. We drank and ate and lived in a completely separate building. The officers and the NCOs were in another mess, and the airmen had their own bars and places. And it was considered the norm that you didn't really mix, partly because those the airmen, the engineers might feel they had to be on their best behavior if there were a lot of officers around. If you got yourself too familiar, then when it came time to start handing orders out because things needed to be done to the suite, then there was that barrier to overcome now because you've been on first name terms and now you're delivering orders, which you don't want to have questioned necessarily because there may not be time. So there was a natural rank and order. Having said that, on the squadron, we used to get on very well indeed and be much more friendly with our own engineers, but you wouldn't mix in the same manner with engineers from other units. That wouldn't be appropriate. But on your own unit, with your own line mechanics and the guys fixing your airplane, we're very encouraged. My airplane was Foxtrot. And I was encouraged to find out where Foxtrot was, if it was being worked on. On my spare time, I'd go down and chat to the guys who were doing the work. I might even try and roll up my sleeves, not that I was qualified, but, try and help them out, cleaning it and, doing what I could, hand them tools or whatever, just basically, trying to break down some of those barriers, because I think it was a great way of bolstering morale so that everyone thought that we were all on the same side, fighting the same war, doing the same, similar jobs, and everyone's job was important, whether you were washing the airplane or flying it. So I found at squadron level, we could do that, but outside that, at any other level, it didn't happen. There was very little mixing, in the same way that the senior officers didn't mix with junior officers very much. Friday night at the bar was different. You could go and give the station commander a good finger poke with you in his chest and tell him that he was doing a lousy job. But come Monday morning, no, that was definitely not on.
You could get court-martialed for that.
Exactly. But in the in the officers' mess, in the bar on a Friday night after a few beers, it was generally considered fair game to go and poke your boss in the chest and tell him what was wrong with his squadron.
And hope that he was so drunk he wouldn't remember.
Yeah.
So you always flew the same airplane? I mean, you had like an airplane assigned to
No, I had an airplane with my name on, and that was my airplane. So
But you didn't always
you flew
fly
whatever was on the board, but you
wondering
kept an eye on your airplane, and if it went in the hangar for something, and Foxtrot was always, it was a bit of a hangar queen. You know, it was, we used to call it a Christmas tree, because that's one which sits in the hangar and just rob bits off it for other airplanes, and it never seems to get fixed.
That's sad.
It was a pity.
No, I didn't have that experience at all. As far as like, you know, I never had an airplane with my name on it. But when I flew my first assignment flying 141s, we had no contact whatsoever with mechanics, engineers, whatever you want to call them, crew chiefs. We did have on a regular crew in the cockpit, though, we had two, typically the aircraft commander and the co-pilot. We're officers, commissioned officers, and then generally speaking, the flight engineer / scanner. And they were both non-commissioned officers, and the reason why there's a different name for each of them. They'd kind of like take turns, like on one leg, one of them would be sitting at the engineer panel, and the other one would be the scanner that goes outside and for engine starts and that kind of thing, and does other things. And then the next one, they just swap roles, but same position, and non-commissioned officers. And then the load master or load masters, depending on what kind of cargo we're hauling, were enlisted airmen that were not non-commissioned officers at all. And so, you know, had a couple different breakdowns of rank and that type of thing. And obviously, because we flew the trips together, you know, we worked with each other. And I don't remember if we ever were on a first name basis. I don't think so. But as you say, Nick, you know, the quarters where we stayed, you know, the officers went to the officers' quarters when we were out on trips, and the non-commissioned officers and the airmen were in a different setup. And at our bases, even when I was an instructor in pilot training, we had separate officers clubs and separate non-commissioned officers clubs and other types of setups for the airmen. So it was definitely something that they kept everybody apart. And the only person that I know of that I can remember, because it's been such a long time, that I actually was on a first name basis with, who was a non-commissioned officer. And we all know that the non-commissioned officers are the ones that actually run everything. And that was true in our I was a wing safety officer for the T-37 fleet and at Columbus. And the guy that basically ran the office was a non-commissioned, I think it was a chief master sergeant or a master sergeant. Maybe he wasn't a chief, but he was way up there in the non-commissioned officer ranks. And we were on a first name basis because, you know, we worked day in and day out in the same office, same space. So yeah, that's it. That was my relationship and experience.
I mean, we often had sort of casual nicknames for each other, like a position. They wouldn't call you sir all the time. You know, you get called the driver or whatever. And, you know, we would do the same, but you didn't actually use first names unless it was a social event. And we used to have a lot of social events where we included the whole squadron. So every rank came, but that was just the whole squadron together. And after a few beers, everyone was having fun. But outside of uniform, if I was down the golf course playing a game of golf with one of our engineers, an NCO or you know, an airman,
you'd
then
make them salute you, wouldn't you?
Hey. Yeah, I'd put my hat on especially. Then you'd be on first name terms. But you always understood that when you went back to work, things reverted because it was both embarrassing for him and embarrassing for me if we let that slip. It was just the way it was. Mind you, let's not forget, I came out of the Air Force in 93, so, you know, it was a while ago now.
Yeah, I came out in 88, and I suspect that things are a little bit different now because I don't think they have separate commissioned officers clubs and separate non-commissioned officers clubs anymore. I think that they're all one big thing, and I don't know what they call it. So I'm wondering if that has changed the way that the commissioned officers and the non-commissioned officers interact. So I suspect it probably has changed all that. So maybe somebody listening right now who is either presently in the military or just recently left the military, perhaps you can send us some feedback and let us know what the relationship is. Yeah, and I suspect it also is different depending on what type of airplane you're flying and the mission that you're flying. You know, it used to be in the old days MAC and SAC and TAC. You know, there was different cultures and all those different and Air Training Command ATC. Now it's the way they put everything together and separate things is quite different than from what I remember. So.
Yeah, Armando would be a good person to ask, but I think he's a bit busy right now, sadly.
Yeah, well, maybe Armando, if you're listening, you want to, you know, send off a quick feedback. We would appreciate it. So
yeah.
With that,
Arnie asks what it's like in the civilian service.
Oh.
And there it's obviously a lot more relaxed. I mean, if you need to, you know, got an engineer on board, there's a definite hierarchy because the engineer has the aeroplane when it's on the ground and he's fixing something. When he's handed over to me, it's mine, and he doesn't touch anything without being polite enough to say, "Captain, do you mind if I put the APU on? I want to check something." Occasionally you get people who just walk in to the flight deck and start pushing buttons, and if it was my airplane and I was halfway through my checklist, I'd go, "What the hell are you doing? You know, I've just set that up. How am I supposed to know? I've got to have to start all over again now." You know, you have the decency just to say, "Can I do something?" and tell me what you're going to do so that I know if it's going to affect the safety of the airplane. So,
yeah, we're on a friendly basis as far as the mechanics at Acme and the pilots and mutual respect and all that kind of stuff. But as Nick said, there's a place and a time for the way you do it. The interesting thing I was just reminded of is that it seems like we pilots have all these rules and regulations as far as, like, you know, when you can start an APU and how much time you have to wait before you do this, or you can't do this on the ground, you know. And then the mechanic comes in and he just starts flipping switches and everything and doesn't have anybody clearing anything outside. I'm thinking, what are you doing? He goes, "Oh, we don't have those rules. We just do this stuff." And I'm like, dang it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting, though.
Yeah.
I mean, in Civvy Street, there still has to be a hierarchy, because ultimately there's only one person who's going to carry the can. There's only one person whose opinion will be final. And whilst we encourage always to seek the advice and the assistance of everyone around us, the ultimate decision comes down to one bloke, and it's Jeff.
If you're just me for everything.
Yeah, everything.
Aviation related.
Yeah.
It's just
same in the podcast. Final decision.
Exactly.
Jeff.
I'm just an ogre, apparently. Shut up, Liz. I'll talk to you later. Just kidding.
Docker pay.
All right. So I think that is going to do it for today's. Oh, I was just going to add one more thing before we end. The fact that, and just to kind of amplify or support what you just said, Nick, is that when it comes to whether an airplane is going to fly or not, it's all down to the captain, the commander of the thing, and you know, no matter what a mechanic says to try to convince me that the airplane is safe to fly and, you know, it's legal to fly and everything else, I just calmly say, well, that may be, but I just don't feel that it's, for me, a safe way to operate. So I'm not going to take the airplane until this is fixed or whatever. And, you know, the worst that can happen is that I leave the airplane and they find somebody else that will fly the airplane, which, that doesn't happen very often. Usually when you finally put your foot down, they go, okay, this airplane is down. We're going to find another airplane for you. So.
Well, I know a great story about someone who's in the chat room who did exactly that and got fired.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I'll tell you one day, but or perhaps he'll tell you himself one day.
Yeah, maybe he can send, I think I know who you're talking about, and he can send us some feedback on that. But in the meantime, it is time for us to end part 1, and we are going to stop right here. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this part, and stay tuned for part 2 coming up shortly. Ta-da!
Hey, well done. 2 hours.
A little over 2 hours, so it leaves us
2 hours
little
and a couple of minutes.
or under than.
Well, you could always do a 4-hour show.
Well, that might be because Rick, he can talk, for sure.
Yeah,
it's all good stuff. So
it's all stuff.
It's all stuff. Well, just in case he's watching this first half, which I doubt.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia, yes, the Human Aviation Encyclopedia will be on part 2. So if you're watching this video, I'm going to rename this 472 part 1, and then you should see somewhere in there APG 472 part 2 as well. And so make sure you watch both videos. I'm not sure who all is going to join me on the next one, but hopefully some other Liz will be here. So talking in my ear, yelling at me in my ear. No, she doesn't yell. Just kidding. Anywho,
I'll be doing pictures for this nice lady.
Yes, she is a nice lady. Lane, we don't know yet. Rick and I are going to have to get together. I'm going to have to find out his exact schedule. He did say that he would. Here, let me find my communication with him. He said if this connection issue isn't worked out in time, I'm open to do a 2-parter from H&L Honolulu tomorrow evening or Sunday morning. So it's either going to be tomorrow, and I don't know if he's talking about Honolulu time or Eastern Daylight Time. I suspect it's probably Honolulu time.
Yeah, you'd think for a pilot he'd be more precise, but then again, he's a cargo pilot. So
he's a cargo pilot, and Rick has always had problems with time.
Yeah, despite having the biggest watch in the world, he has problems with time.
Okay. Kelly says, does that mean you only need 25% accuracy?
Absolutely.
Ooh, good point. Yeah.
25%
is good enough. Thank you for pointing that out.
Very true.
Yeah. All right. Well, do we need half a show title now? Well, it wouldn't hurt to get some suggestions because, who knows? Uber Frank, I was only half listening.
Well, that's all right, Frank.
That's a good one.
He was just using one ear. Is that right, Frank?
Oh, thank you, Robert. He liked part 1, and he's looking forward to part 2.
There's no plain tail in part 2.
Oh, so it's not going to be quite as good. Yeah, we'll just play it again, Liz said. It's going to be an extra long episode.
Wow, that will be a long episode.
Yes. So yeah, again, just if you haven't already followed us on Twitter at APG Crew or at Airline Pilot Guy, or on Facebook, Facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Liz just told me we'll put it on the calendar as well as the APG Community Calendar, and you can find that on the website airlinepilotguy.com. Under the calendar. I think that's what we call it, calendar or community calendar, something like that. And let's see, how else would they learn about this? Liz said that she's going to take everybody's telephone number down and she's going to call them personally. Wow, that's above and beyond, Liz.
Yeah.
She didn't actually say that. Oh no, she's asking for a raise again. No, forget about the phone call thing. Too bad.
Yeah. Do it by carrier pigeon. It'll be cheaper.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah.
So anyway, just follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all the things, all the places, and check the YouTube channel if you have the if you subscribe via YouTube and you click on the bell, that's going to give you notifications when we set something up. So as soon as it's set up on StreamYard, that'll send messages to both Facebook and YouTube. And as I said, if you click that little bell on YouTube, I'm not sure what you do on Facebook. Yeah, it'll wake you up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, telling you that we're on.
Don't click the bell. I clicked the bell once and I can't unclick it now.
Uh-oh, really? Yeah, you can unclick it.
You reckon?
Are you talking about something? You're using some kind of a metaphor for something else, apparently. Okay.
Can't get rid of the noise.
Let's see. Show title: Serious parachute bailouts. Or do you mean to make a play on words of Cirrus, or did you just misspell it, Micah? Cirrus parachute.
Metroliner is a pipe. I'm trying to think if I could do a picture of Captain Jeff smoking a Metroliner.
Nah, that's no good. Drain pipe. Sorry, Arnie. I'm talking about Nick's suggestion is no good. What'd you say, Liz? Drain pipe versus SR-22. It's a sewer pipe, not a drain. Drain pipe is a nice name for it. It's a sewer pipe.
That's very kind of you, Lane. That's Buddy, who I photographed this morning.
Buddy?
Birdie.
Cool
yeah, Buddy.
dog.
I've got some great shots of him jumping in a river.
Is that just his fur, that gray, that looks like he has a gray beard?
It's just, he's wet, so it's shiny.
Oh, I see. Okay. Let's see. What else? At least he isn't an airship pilot. Okay. Show titles. That's it from you guys? That's it? Come on. Yeah. Liz doesn't think much about your title suggestions, people. Sorry. Oh, well.
Well, I'm not going to be able to work on the artwork until Sunday anyway, so...
Yeah, we have time to work all this out. And then Micah says, yes, he was making a play on words, seriously versus seriously. Gotcha. Okay. I like the sewer pipe name on a Metroliner. Thank you, Arnie.
I got your name into the plane tail, Micah.
What's that?
I got Micah's name in the plane tail.
Did you? I don't remember hearing Micah.
Oh,
yeah, the Sky Raider, right? Or the Sky Knight, or the Night Raider. What was it called?
Sky Knight.
Sky Knight. That's it. The shoot. Yes. Shoot. All right. Well, yeah, we have time. Then we have another half to go. Well, not quite a half. Another third to go of the show. So with that, we're going to sign off. And hopefully we'll be able to see most of you back here again whenever we do this again.
Actually, if you take out the coffee bar and the plane tail, we only really did an hour and a half of talking. So you should have another hour and a half, shouldn't you?
Yeah, but we have to. Yeah, Liz is saying, yeah, but that counts. But those two things you just mentioned, you can't just take. We can take them out if you want, but all that work for nothing, you know? Come on,
that
Nick.
wouldn't be good.
You don't want me to do that.
That would make me cry.
Yeah, Liz says she thinks you need to go to bed now.
Yes, I do.
All right. Okay, speaking of going to bed, we're going to go to bed here on this broadcast. So thanks, everyone. Look for all the notifications from all the various places, and we'll see you again for part 2. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.